All right. So Heather, we see the
Yep, I'm getting there. There we go.
You're working your jam.
I'm working,
all right.
and I'll get back to your slides.
No worries.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Good morning and welcome, everyone. This is the Great Lakes ROTA-RC presentation on compassion resilience. Today's session is being hosted by Great Lakes ROTA-RC's regional partner, UW-Madison Division of Extension. I just want to take a moment to thank them for sponsoring our speakers today. I am your host, Amanda Cura. I am also the Technical Center's Regional Project Manager. Before we get into our presentation, we have a few quick housekeeping items just to address, so hang tight with us as we go through those. The first is to mention our funder and funding activities. I'm going to ask Heather just to advance one slide there. The first issue here is that I just want to note that ROTA-RC, the Great Lakes ROTA-RC, is a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration project, so SAMHSA project. We are Region 5, which covers Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. So we welcome in everybody from that region, that area, wherever you're coming from today. And if you're coming from outside that region, we welcome you as well. We know that there are 10 regions that are covered under the SAMHSA grant-funded project. So if you're jumping around different regions, checking things out, welcome. We're glad to have you. And under that funding activity, we provide virtual and/or on-demand education, evidence-based resources and research, as well as technical outreach to professionals working in and with rural communities. The next thing I want to do is just take a moment to promote the use of affirming and person-first language when discussing behavioral health disorders. As we work to create an environment of learning together, we want that to feel welcoming and safe for everyone. And so let us work together to manage a space that supports that non-stigmatizing, recovery-oriented language that can help to reduce negative bias and promote engagement. So as we learn about successful prevention, treatment, and recovery, we welcome you formally to the Great Lakes ROTA-RC community of learning. Let's move next to get to know our speakers today. So Mandi Dornfeld is an area director at UW-Madison Division of Extension. Her focus is on creating healthy, thriving workplace cultures that empower people to identify and pursue their own health and well-being. She is certified by UW-Madison's coaching program, and her career has focused on community strategies to build resilience and individual empowerment, to prevent suicide and build capacity with adults to address the challenges of navigating adolescence and young adulthood. She has an intense focus on creating community level awareness of trauma and the healing that workplaces and relationships can provide. She brings her deep belief in the self-efficacy of people along with their coaching style into her training environments and trains with authenticity, humor, and compassion. Heather Quackenboss is a human development and relationships educator at UW-Madison Division of Extension, La Crosse County. She focuses on well-being, culture and diversity, community collaboration, and mental wellness. She provides strategic facilitation for organizations, collaborations, and communities, ensuring focus and action-oriented outcomes and goals. She is certified in the science of happiness at work through UC Berkeley. She has been trained at UW-Madison Public Health and Division of Extension as a facilitator for racism as a public health crisis and health equity coach with racial justice from the heart and facilitates racial justice with YWCA. She also is trained in BLACK, which stands for Black Leaders Acquiring Collective Knowledge, and Ho-Chunk Nation. Heather has an authentic approach, utilizing a collaborative facilitation style infused with compassion, adaptability, and humor. And so now, without further ado, I turn you over to Mandi and Heather.
Thank you, Amanda. It's weird hearing about yourself, and thank you for that. Mandi, I'll let you take this away.
Yeah, I always listen and I'm like, could I identify myself if I heard that about myself? So really thinking about who we are, right? And that's what we're going to lead with today, and really infuse through the entire time that we have together, is thinking about what is self-compassion, and more importantly, where we've been sold an idea that is for most of us unachievable. So looking at self-care and looking at some of the images, Heather, will you pull the rest of the images up on the slide? So when you think about the word self-care, often, or this was Google, I Googled self-care, and these were the top images that came up. And oftentimes when I looked at that, and when many of you see that, we reflect and we think, none of that is for me. Or, yeah, I've tried some of those things, but they didn't help. They helped me feel better for an hour or 45 minutes, or they looked pretty and I took a picture and I posted on social media, but it didn't change how I felt, and it certainly doesn't change your environment. So a great example of this is the utilization of your time off. Lots of times we talk about self-care, vacation time, time off. And so many times I hear people say, I can't take the time off. I can't step away. I can't fully disconnect from work or my life, because when I get back, I'm going to have 265 emails. I will have missed phone calls, but I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to say, you know what? Those things are true. And if you truly disconnect and you truly think about what you need for yourself, you'll be more effective in managing those 265 emails. So when we think about that reframing of what self-care is, it's really building our own resilience versus changing the way the world is. So these images really send us a non-inclusive message. We don't fit into a lot of challenges around them. They're very female identifying focused when we think about that, and every human has needs. So Heather, will you advance to the next slide? So what we're going to talk about as the grounding effort today is a reflective time for you to think about what is real self-care. Real self-care is care and decisions and activities that are good for you. So they might not feel good, right? But they're good for you in the long run. So thinking about moving your body in a joyful manner, moving your body so that you aren't stiff and sore, and you get all of those benefits of that. I have some runner friends, one of them is my co-presenter, and I chuckle about running because I am going to be very honest with you. If I am running, you all need to run because something's not good. But I have found through exploration and really challenging myself on self-care, what feels good, what brings me joy. And so I'm a swimmer. So I spend time in the water. It works for my body. It created an environment of social connection and belonging. So thinking about what's good for you, and everyone's answer is different. So these are examples of things that you might need. So I want you to ask yourself, what is something that I need to do for myself that it might feel good, but that's not the first level, right? But what's good for me? What do I need right now? And if you can ask yourself that question on a very regular basis and utilize technology. So I have a ping on my phone that goes off at the top of the hour that reminds me to stand up and move, get a drink of water. And I trained myself to say, what do I need right now? Sometimes it's, I need to keep going. Like I'm invested in and focused on what I'm doing, but there's other times that I need to like close my eyes, and I'm talking like one breath, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and move on. So, but we need to be reminded to do that. So really thinking of that difference of the trendy self-care versus, and it feels good. And I'm not saying don't do those things, but if what you're doing for self-care, improving your health and well-being, that's something good, but might not be something good. So we have to find that balance. All right, I'm going to hand over to Heather to start the conversation about the fatigue cycle.
Yes. And one of the things that I really do also want to point out is there's a lot going on. For the last 3 years, we've dealt with different pandemic issues. We've dealt with different ways to work. We've dealt with all kinds of things. And there's a whole lot of systems in place that we can't do a lot about when we're talking self-care, right? It's like, oh, hey, have this cup of tea, and then you can solve the systemic crushing workload that you have. So there's a lot of things when we look at life that make us need to do different things, right? So we're going authentic here, folks, and we're going to really look at compassion fatigue, because while we would love to feel good all the time and we'd love to be able to do all the things we want to do, we also have compassion fatigue. And when you work with other humans, this happens all the time. And this lovely chart here, I will have some pictures pop up so it might remind you of the different things we talk about. But anytime we start something new, anytime we go to a presentation, anytime we start a new project, anytime we maybe start a new hobby, or we're now all of a sudden caretakers for either children or parents or grandparents, we jump into this cycle. And it's not going to follow the circle. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's going to bounce around, not even like a ping pong ball, but like a pinball machine, where you think the ball's going to go this way and then it bounces all the way to the other side. So for us, just to explain this, anytime we start something new, most of us often start on that top as the zealot. We're committed. We are going to be the best ever at this job, this role, this project, this caretaking, this thing that we're doing. We're going to go the extra mile. So when you think of, people in the media, we think of Elle Woods. What, like it's hard? I'm going to just do this thing. And this is from Legally Blonde. And we're going to just do everything and it's going to be beautiful and brilliant. Or Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins made everything happen, and she was always happy, and she figured it out. Even when she dealt with grumpy folks, she was like, I'm going to elevate you, quite literally in the movie, and we're going to be happier, and it's going to be amazing. We all get to this point sometimes, and that's awesome. We need this. We need folks with rose-colored glasses, because when we don't have them, we need the folks with the rose-colored glasses, and we all get there. We also, though, roll over to that grumpy cat. And grumpy cat, that's where we're irritable. This is where we're angry. We have a lot of cynicism. We might not be creative anymore. We might feel helpless or hopeless. It doesn't matter. Where I find my irritability come out is when I get in the car after work, or when I get in the car after something. And if someone doesn't use a turn signal, oh my goodness, it's the worst thing ever, right? I mean, just think about where you allow your irritability to come out. For me, it's the vehicle. I try to drive well, and I sometimes get really mad. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on here? Think about, if you have ever watched Glee, Sue Sylvester. She hated all of the show choir kids, didn't she? Just hated them. Nothing was ever going to be okay. The singing was just irritating. She's like, what is this, a musical? So she really did not like it. Irritability, if you think, okay, compassion, am I acting like Sue Sylvester? You might be irritable. Or if you have watched the recent Guardians of the Galaxy, Rocket Raccoon. This is not a happy character. And yet, he always gets the job done. So just because you're irritable, just because you're feeling kind of helpless or hopeless, doesn't mean you're not doing the work. It's just you're doing it from this space of, ugh. Then we might move down to withdrawal. This is where things are just overwhelming. Everything seems so complex. We might be chronically exhausted. We might actually get physically sick. We have difficulty empathizing with others, or we're just numb to other people's pain, or we show up, but we're just doing what we need to do. And we've all been there, right? So thinking about characters that might match this, Ron Swanson didn't like helping anybody, worked for Parks and Rec on the TV show, and just doesn't want to help anybody, is kind of like, nah, whatever, I don't care. And this is how he had all of a sudden all of his meetings on March 31st because his assistant thought there was no March 31st. And then he had to do everything. He definitely absenteeism. And also the church lady. Think of ourselves when we are like, oh my gosh, what are you thinking? And here's where some of our biases come out. We're like, well, aren't you special? Isn't that special? And we start to get a little bit judgy when we're in that withdrawal. One story that I have, I used to work prevention, and I worked at an AODA center with a couple counselors who worked with folks who were probably at some of the hardest points in their life. And this was back in the 90s when the movie Precious came out. It's one of the first movies that really showcased trauma on the big screen. And when they got back from the movie, I asked them, hey, how was it? And their response was, I see worse every day. That, my friends, is withdrawal. Then we might move over to Zombie Cat over here. And this is where we are just putting everything on ourselves. We have to do this. I can never do enough. I'm never going to be good enough. If I don't do it, nobody can do it. We might lose sleep at night. We're always thinking about things. And we get this sense of persecution of, oh my gosh, nobody else can do it right. It has to be me. And if you think of possible characters on television, we might think of Kitty from that 70s show. She's always doing all of the things, right? And just keeps going through life and kind of has that crazed look in her eye of I'm happy. But if you really look behind it, you're like, what, are you okay? And then we might think of Leslie Knope, also of Parks and Rec. I have to do everything because no one else is going to do it right. And how many of us get into that spiral of, if I'm not here, it's just all going to fall apart. And then eventually, as we're bouncing around this circle, we get to that unwell versus renewal. So we get to burnout or compassion resilience. So if you think of burnout, think of any character from the Office Space. Now, this movie's a little bit old as well, but all of these characters in the Office Space, they go to work every day. No one's happy. No one treats them very well. No one really takes care of each other, and they completely burn out. I mean, completely. If you look at the state of renewal and that compassion and resilience, we might think of people like Han Solo. He started in Star Wars because of the money. And that's often we all get a job because, well, we need to be paid so we can do the things we like, right? Han Solo did the same thing. And in that, he found friendship with Luke and Leia. He found, okay, hold on, there's a little bit bigger purpose here. And he started not doing things just for money, but because, okay, there's this purpose and I have these goals. And the last character, when we think of renewal and compassion resilience, Inigo Montoya. I mean, talk about a man with a purpose. I'm going to find the person who murdered my father. And here's my life's purpose. And here's what I'm going to do. And it kept him going. So when we're looking at compassion fatigue, we're all on here, folks. We are all bouncing around here. And what I'd like you to just think about is, where are you? Like at this moment, where are you 5 minutes ago? Where are you, when you get in your car and your car is hotter than hot because it's 1 billion degrees outside, and you get in there and you take maybe a breath? Where are you? And just recognizing it can really help us. So that's the first step, and being really authentic with compassion fatigue. And Mandi's going to take us through, okay, here's how to deal with some of this.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words in the chart, and really thinking about, I love that Heather used characters, right? Because we can depersonalize a little bit of like, let's not plot our coworkers, our partners, all of those people, and like, let's not identify other folks, right? So, really thinking about, Heather and I clearly don't watch any of the same movies or TV, because I was like, Heather, you got to tell me who these people are. But I did this exercise with my own kind of worldview, and it was interesting to think about, like, where am I similar? When have I shown up in that way? And what do I do? So most of us have had an experience in our career where we were burned out. We might have recognized it, we might have not recognized it, but awareness is so critical. And when we can get to that place of like, I'm not finding joy in something that I did before, or I get to that place of that no one can do the things, I can't take vacation. And really when we know that we're lying to ourselves, right? We can lie to the world, we can put a facade on, but when we look in the mirror, are we telling ourselves the truth? And that's how we start to discover burnout. I've had a couple of periods in my 25-year career of burnout. And sometimes I got back on the track on my own, and sometimes I didn't. I needed to deploy some external help. But the very first step of that is admitting there's something that needs compassion. So that's not reflected in a lot of the work of self-compassion and compassion resilience. And as I've really thought about this, oftentimes we ask folks to skip step one, which is realizing there's a problem. We just get them into like, you should be kind to yourself, and we're going to explore common humanity. But when we know there's a problem, give yourself that space to acknowledge it and honor it and admit it and grieve it. Then you're ready to get on a procedure and a track of really deploying that self-compassion. So we forget that. And so I wanted to bring that into that space, is like admitting there's a problem and a challenge is really, really hard. So hold that space for yourself. Then we get into self-kindness. So Heather, will you advance the slide? So self-kindness is really interesting, because what oftentimes people say is treat yourself as you would treat your best friend. And when I've heard that in my life, and when I've said that to other people, what usually happens is a justification and defense of my best friend, why she or he or they deserve that more than I do. You know, my best friend has 4 children. My best friend is working 3 jobs. My best friend is a better human than I am. There is no qualifier here. So recognizing that all humans are deserving of that self-kindness, and really thinking about, am I doing the best I can with what I have? Am I on the cycle of compassion fatigue because of systematic issues? Am I experiencing a life transition that's hard? Before many of you came on, we talked about sending kids off to their next step. And when I have friends that are doing that, or people in my life, I'm like, oof, yeah, what are you doing to navigate that? Life's transitions are difficult if we're caring for anybody that depletes us. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to do it, but we have to look at the reality of depletion. So the image you see, I hope in front of you, is an apple tree with 2 bikes. It was self-designed by me, because I really wanted to have the picture of like, what is self-compassion? And I reflected upon my very complicated relationship with the giving tree. You know, this book about this beautiful tree, if you haven't heard of it, and it has this relationship with a little boy, and it gives the boy shade and leaves and apples and fun and memories. But there's a piece in the middle that's the tipping point. And it's when the tree starts to give non-renewable resources to the little boy in an effort to care and provide love. What I want to think about with that self-kindness is, what can you give of yourself that's renewable? And that's that point where giving and serving and caring is really powerful and impactful. But when we start giving away so much of ourselves that at the end of the book, we become a stump and a canoe, we're not doing ourselves any good. And the people that we love don't want us to do that. So that's that self-kindness, is really recognizing that what we give to others is there's a correlation between how we're feeling. So why do we give? Why do we care? If we can bestow that same care upon ourselves, we will be able to care for others, but we have to start with ourselves. And that's recognizing and making the very difficult, courageous step of saying, I am worth care and concern. And that is not something that I say lightly, and I know how complicated it is. But if you just try it for even a short period of time, you're going to start to see how these other pieces go together. All right, Heather, let's talk about common humanity.
All right. Thank you, Mandy. And I love that. Give your apples, don't be a canoe. And so this next, I accidentally skipped his slide. So here we're back. Common humanity, everyone makes mistakes on Zoom, and everyone suffers, and everyone is not perfect. And the thing is, with social media, we have been so fortunate to be connected in different ways with each other. I can look at, folks that I graduated from high school with so long ago, be like, oh, wow, here's what they're doing. Here's their stuff. What we post on social media, though, is often the pretty stuff. I have 3 kids, and I have taken pictures of them since they were really little. And I used to photograph weddings. And so I know how to take pictures, right? With my kids, it would take about 67 pictures to get one decent one. And that's just what happened. Did I ever post the 67 pictures that were awful? No, unless it was incredibly funny and I was feeling cute that day, right? I would post the bright, shiny one to make it look like, oh, look at this. Heather has all of her ducks in a row. Her family's so perfect, all of this stuff. No, that's only what I show. So when we look at Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok and all of these things, we're seeing a very edited version of people's lives. And then we start comparing our real life to an edited life. And that's just not fair to us. So the picture of iceberg lettuce here. Here's the thing. My mom was quite the hippie. And literally, we ate carob, we had, granola before it was known to people. We had all kinds of things, but we also lived in the country. And to go grocery shopping, at a bigger store, we had to meal plan. We had to figure out what was for dinner the whole week and buy all of the ingredients for that. Now, at the time, if we had tacos or fish sandwiches or any kind of sandwich or salads or whatever on our menu, we needed lettuce. And the lettuce that was available to us in the 80s was iceberg lettuce. And my mom taught us the way to get the right iceberg lettuce. You want the heavy one. And you really hoped that your menu planning, that your lettuce, if you had sandwiches, was the outside of the lettuce and not that icky inside core stuff. And if you love iceberg lettuce, bless you. That's great. I just look at it now and think, oh my gosh, because all of a sudden, later 80s, early 90s, there comes romaine lettuce in the store and butter lettuce and all of these different kinds of lettuces that are really amazing and different things. Did my mom, the hippie, accept any of this lettuce initially? Absolutely not. She's like, oh, what do you need this overly priced, expensive leaf for? We have iceberg lettuce. And so the thing that I want you to remember from iceberg lettuce is we only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. And so when we're looking at someone else's life, we see a little pinprick of it. And we don't know everything else that's going on. And honestly, it's the same for us, for everyone else. So we didn't know that iceberg lettuce is really virtually the least nutritious lettuce in the world and was really only developed so it was easy to ship. So we came to these other lettuces slowly. So when we look at common humanity, it takes time. And we know that we just don't know what we don't know about someone else. And everyone else goes through things just like we do. The next thing is mindfulness. Now, it's a little bit ironic that I get the mindfulness slide. And Jen, I love that you love iceberg lettuce with blue cheese and bacon. There's wedge salads now. Iceberg lettuce is on its way back. It's in the fancy restaurants, folks. So it's not all bad. What we used to know is not all bad. When we look at mindfulness, I have a feeling a lot of us are thinking about meditation or taking a mindful few moments or 5 minutes and doing breathing exercises. And I'm going to just admit to all of you very authentically, I stink at this. I absolutely stink. When a meeting starts with a mindful minute, I turn my camera off and do something else. I really am I just have an issue with it. Here's why this is important that I'm presenting this slide, because if any of you are like me, I want you to know that you don't have to sit there and breathe for 5 minutes. If you do, that's awesome. And I know there's a whole lot of benefit to it. And when we're talking about mindfulness, we're talking about noticing without judgment. That's it. And a lot of times if I'm driving, I live in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and we have these bluffs. So the sunrise is always just a little bit later than everyone else because the sun has to come over the bluffs. And it's kind of glorious. And so when that big red orb comes over the bluffs, I take the 6 seconds and be like, wow, that's amazing. That, my friends, is mindfulness. I'm noticing that on purpose. And sometimes when we look at mindfulness, we notice, okay, how's it really going? And we can notice our struggle. We notice, I'm irritable today. That person didn't use their turn signal and it's really making me a little angry. What's going on, Heather? What else is happening? What might you need to take a breath and think about? So instead of just reacting, is feeling it, is being with it, sitting in that muck with, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? And not judging ourselves for it and just being present in that moment, because sometimes that will help us come to an answer. There was a day I was dropping my then 8th grader off at school, and it was one of those no good, very bad days. And if any of you have ever dropped kids off in school at the school lines, it is completely overwhelming. And if you don't do it right, you get horns honked at you, you get certain fingers waved at you, you get all of the things, right? You get judged. And so she got out of the car, and I swear that if the teacher wasn't standing there welcoming all the kids, she would have flipped me off. I mean, it was one of those days, and she slammed that door, and I immediately started crying, and then thought, oh my gosh, I'm crying and I have to get out of this line. And can I get out of this line if I'm crying? And I did, but I thought, I am so overwhelmed, and immediately felt better because I've been overwhelmed before. And just noticing it and paying attention to it was like, okay, when I'm overwhelmed, what do I do? And so mindfulness is noticing. And sometimes noticing helps lead us to, hey, here's what I might need right now. So to transition then from self-kindness and common humanity and mindfulness, one of the things that we can do is we can look at our own core values. And the reason we do this is because to know ourselves, to know our identity, to know what's really important to us helps us when we get to the next thing we're going to talk about, which I'll just spill is going to be boundaries. So you're going to think, what? How do we get from these words to boundaries? We're taking you there. So I'd like you to think about, and if you don't mind putting it in chat, that would be great. And if you're watching this later, I'd like you to think about this. But think about if you needed to define yourself with one core value, one value to sum yourself up, what would that value be? Now, I will also admit my bachelor's degree is in philosophy, so I have a tendency to break rules on purpose because I can. So one of the things that I tend to do is look at these words and like, okay, what word can fit like 5 of them in it? So often I will pick things like connection because I want to connect to people authentically and with love and, do it in harmony. So what would you sum yourself up with? And I see in the chat, we have some gratitude, peace, honesty, authenticity, community, persistence, caring, kindness. Oh, these are beautiful. Connection, grace. Yes, compassion, connection. authenticity, beautiful. Thank you, folks. And you can keep putting them in there. Here's why this is important. The thing is, this word is kind of nice, and we can put it on our mirror at home or put it on a Post-it note on our computer and say, okay, what I would really like to make sure I do is emulate this word during most of my time or most of my days. It's kind of, and I say most of, because there's sometimes we're going to have the fall from grace and we're not going to be kind and we're going to get a little bit surly once in a while. That happens. That's okay. Like I said, I get in the car and you don't use your turn signal in front of me. I may have words. We all do that. That's fine. It's normal. We're human. What I'd like you to think of now is, what does it actually look like day to day to live that value? So if my value is connection, I want to make sure that the person who I'm talking to or who I'm with, we feel connected. So that might mean I have to put my phone down. That might mean I need to shut my work computer off. That might mean I stop doing the dishes. That might mean, especially with my teenagers, is what can we do side to side so we don't have to stare at each other's eyes, because that's awkwardly uncomfortable and we're never going to connect that way. So sometimes it's just a reframe of different things. So what I'd like you to think about is, okay, here's my value. Here's what that might look like on the itty bitty scale of day-to-day life. And then, because I'm a person who's very much practicing boundaries, I have not gotten this down yet at all. But if I look at, okay, connection is my value, what are things I really want to say yes to? I want to say yes when friends call and say, hey, would you like to go for coffee? I'd like to say yes when my kids are like, hey, do you want to play tennis? I'd like to say yes when my kids are like, hey, I'd want to talk to you about my Minecraft world ad nauseum and tell you everything about it. Because I'm interested in connection, I'm going to listen to Minecraft talk. What I also get to do is look at, all right, if my value is connection or authenticity or kindness or contentment or family, what are the things I'm saying no to? And that is where we get to start leading into boundaries.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, so thinking about, and you'll have a PDF link that'll be dropped in the chat for this this particular handout, and looking at boundaries. So lots of times people think boundaries are a whole bunch of saying no, when in fact, if we can reframe how boundaries can support really healthy, authentic, brave relationships, personally and professionally, imagine a boundary as the parameters and the fence around where people can move freely. So thinking about, if I set a boundary of my work day being from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and I communicate that to those that I work with, they can feel free to reach out to me anytime in that. If I don't set a boundary, there's some inconsistency around, I don't know if I should reach out during the lunch hour, or I don't know if 7 a.m. is too early, or if 3 o'clock is too late. So really think about it as a way to tell people how they can safely and courageously and authentically have relationships and interactions with you. So if you are in any of that cycle of burnout or fatigue, boundaries are one of the first and best strategies that you can put into place to start to ease that onslaught of external pressure. So really looking at, do I need to, as you've assessed that real self-care, you've gone through the compassion, the self-compassion cycle, then you've got to get to like actionable items, and boundaries can be step one around, I need a 15-minute break. I need my hour lunch to be protected. And you can start to set those up so that you can start to engage in things that help rebuild your capacity, your resilience, and your compassion. So, and really like that's a mitigating strategy for that burnout cycle to get you back into a healthier space. So some examples are utilizing email scheduling. Professional examples are utilizing email scheduling, are thinking about ways to discuss this, being proactive, finding ways to say yes to things that are good, reevaluating your capacity at this time and working with those that support you to take a few things off of your plate as you replenish and restore your capacity. Using that courageous plain language. This is a step that is very difficult for people to set a boundary, because we feel like if we're setting boundaries, we're saying no to our future, we're saying no to opportunities, we're saying no to people. But remember, boundaries are saying yes. They're saying yes to the space that you can have that relationship. If you're not naturally someone who has a lot of boundaries, I encourage you to start with one that feels the most safe. So start with a boundary of, I'm not going to respond to email after this time of day. And if you haven't managed that on your own, use the schedule send feature, right? If you think about, I'm going to take a lunch hour every day, communicate that and try it out. If you have not had boundaries, here are some things you can expect at the beginning. People are not going to trust that you're setting them. They're going to test them. They're going to push on that fence you've set up. So we want you to make sure that you think them through before you set them. Set one, practice it, live in that discomfort, go back through that self-compassion cycle of that kindness, that common humanity, and that mindfulness to really help you turn that boundary from a stick and a string into a brick wall, right? Not a brick wall to keep people out, but a brick wall to keep people in, and thinking about that safety in a relationship. So the more you practice them, the better they will be. And then really thinking about that boundary as like, I've thought it through, I feel some confidence in it, and I'm going to keep it firm, because people will test them. And we really absolutely 100% tell people and show people how to treat us. So you have that handout so that you can kind of think about where you want to start with boundaries if you need to. Heather, will you go to the next screen? So thinking about, now that you've done some work, internally, you will also get the link for the PDF for this handout, the Healthy Team Culture Team Agreement. So this is can be professional, but we have teams in all levels of our lives. We have professional teams, we have personal teams, we have friend teams, we're part of committees and organizations and boards and book clubs, and our own home functions as a team. So thinking about what's a healthy culture for you, defining that, and thinking about where we can grow, where we can create safety, because a healthy team culture in any team will support the turnaround from burnout. It's going to support you getting back into that cycle of healthy response, and where you are feeling your best in one of those areas. So just a couple of specific examples is, I want to talk about number one. I can't define what healthy body language and words are. We would do that together as a team. The question I would ask is, how have you felt welcomed into this space? And really crowdsource the definition of welcome. One of the things that I hear so frequently is that if someone is sitting with closed body language, meaning they have their hands crossed, that is closed body language, and it's non-inclusive. I would challenge you to think about that in a different way. Sometimes people need to put their hands somewhere, and they might not have pockets, or they might not have a lap, like they might not have a body size that allows for that. Tapping of feet is a regulatory stimuli response for folks. So don't make assumptions, but asking that question of your team of like, when have you felt like you were welcomed? What was present in words and actions and deeds. So that's just like that example of number one, of really thinking about perspectives and not reading something on a checklist of what is open body language. I cross my arms all the time. And I'm aware of it, but it's mostly because I don't know where to put my hands. And thank you, Priscilla, because we're cold, so I recognize that. Yes, this team agreement is a PDF and will be dropped. Thank you for that. So really looking at number 5, I'm not going to read all of these to you, right? You can think about this, but I wanted to give some examples. Number 5, engage in each other's wisdom and strength through huddles throughout our workday to empower success. Create powerful questions. Powerful questions begin with the words what or how. So thinking about the idea of asking questions of what and how. So a question I would ask is, what do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed? How are you managing multiple requests? Versus a question like, who feels really busy right now? Who feels really busy? So thinking about those what or how questions, thinking about those normal team agendas, the normal conversational openers that we tend to have that kind of stick us in nice land versus thoughtful, opening the door to learn from other people's wisdom. And the last one I'm going to use an example for is really thinking about connecting through others through common feelings. So when we think about building connection, we really have to think about that work of empathy. So empathy isn't that I've walked the same road as you. It's connecting to the feelings of a person in a situation. So recognizing that if any of you have ever had a really tough performance review or you've had tough feedback, most of us have had that. And oftentimes the feelings we have that we share are a whole myriad of defensiveness, shame, embarrassment, all of the things that a failure, all of that stuff that gets stuck in our heads. If someone is experiencing a tough situation and they indicate those same levels of feelings, we connect on how we feel. What did I do when I was really embarrassed about a poor performance review? Gosh, I had to step back, reflect on that, and then reach out to someone who I was able to say, what did you do? What did you do with that? How did you manage that? So connecting through feelings is that way to build common humanity and strength and support in your teams. So I am going to turn it over to Heather to wrap us up, and then we'll have a few minutes left for questions.
Thank you, Mandi. So I often will go to trainings or workshops or different things and come out and be like, oh my gosh, either this was so great, or oh my gosh, I could have done that better, or oh goodness, now what? What do I have to do now? And so what we'd like to do with all of you is to really look at, okay, what is your first step in any of the things we've talked about, either recognizing where I might be on the compassion fatigue cycle, or looking at, okay, here's self-kindness and common humanity and mindfulness. Which one tiny daily thing might I be able to do? Because honestly, I'm anti New Year's resolution, because often we make this New Year's resolution and this grand sweeping, I'm going to do this, a major thing, right? I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to run 57 marathons, or whatever it is. And by, I think it's February 18th, 97% of us have left that in the dust. So anytime we change, it's a tiny, tiny first step. Mandi mentioned that she has a little bell on her phone for every hour to remind her to stand up or take a breath. That is a brilliant, tiny first little step that we can do. Because honestly, we have this wonderful John Green quote here, and it really, the meaning of life that I've come around to is connection and awareness. So when we really look at, okay, how are we connected? How can we be aware? Those are also the first steps in self-compassion. And being kind to ourselves is hard. A lot of times we have that inner critic voice in our head And that inner critic has one job, and it's to criticize. And oh, they are just mean and vicious and brutal. So how can we build that inner cheerleader if that's what we need? Or how can we take that inner critic? And one way that I started it, because I was like, tell myself I love myself. What the heck is that hooey? That sounds ridiculous. So I couldn't start there. That wasn't for me. Sarcasm, though, is one of my second languages. And so what I started doing, instead of saying, oh, that was a terrible job, I would say, good job, Heather. And even if I said it sarcastically, my brain remembered, good job, Heather. Right? Tricking myself. That's what I needed to start down the, okay, hold on. You're not that bad. Right? And even if you had to say, okay, that wasn't that bad, that's a little bit above what you might have been telling yourself in your head. So what I'd love for you to do on chat, or if you're brave enough to unmute, what might be a first step from something that you've learned or remembered today for, all right, how can I maybe be a little kinder to myself? Or how can our office, maybe we can try a little something that we say good morning to each other instead of growl. I don't know, our offices can be different, right? What might be one small thing that you could commit to doing every day? I know that's a big question at the end of a short presentation.
Heather, do you want to stop the share so it could be a conversation?
We can do that. I know we're also recording, so this will help folks who are just watching this later. Here's some ideas for you. We'll help you cheat.
All right, while people are thinking, if it's helpful, we can do a little wrap up here, and then we can open it up for questions, and we can end the record if that makes people feel a little bit more comfortable as well. So why don't we do that? I'm going to pop a few things into the chat while we do that. So the first is, if you joined us today through a link that was shared with you, meaning you didn't register, that's fine. We love it. Share it. We're happy for you to be join us by whatever means necessary. But what we would like to do is make sure that we get you on board to be part of our distribution, so that you get notice of the things that we're doing. I don't know why that broke up there. It is great.lakes.rota@extension.wis.edu. So send us your full name and your email address and to that email address. So please don't pop it into the chat. That makes it just a little bit harder for us to pull all of your information. So if you could just send it to that email address, then I can get it and I can add you to our rotation. That also helps us get your certificate of attendance out. So that is super important that we get that. We want to make sure that everyone gets notice of your attendance today, so we can get that out to you, because your time is important and we want you to get recognition of that if you're keeping a professional file of things that you're doing and achieving. The next thing that I just want to make notice of is we would like you to fill out a quick survey. I'm going to pop that in there as well. So if you want to use your phone, that QR code should take you there. If you prefer the link, there is, come on. The link is there. That will take you to our evaluation. That not only helps us as a SAMHSA funded program communicate some data that we have to collect to report back to SAMHSA, but it also helps our presenters know how you found the presentation. So give our presenters some love. They did a great job. They're amazing educators. We love them. We know you love them. It also gives us some feedback on what you would like to see more of in the future. So if you like presentations like this, tell us more of what you would like to see. If you want to see some different things come through ROTA-RC, please let us know that as well. So just take a few minutes. It doesn't take very long. I promise. We don't like long surveys, so we're not going to do that to you either. The last thing that we would like to just touch on is that although July is coming to an end, we're super busy. Mandi and Heather rounded off 3 of our great presentations that we had in July. We have 3 more coming up in August. Here are 2 of the ones coming up of the 3 that we have in August. So the first one will be parent-child interaction and recovery in the context of substance use. That will be August 17th. The next one will be grief, the flip side of the trauma-informed coin. And that will be Wednesday, August 23rd. We do have a 3rd one on August 31st, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to go to our website and check it out. It'll be super exciting. That one will be hosted by our partners in Michigan. It looks to be good. I think it's called Reimagining Recovery, but you're gonna have to go look. You're gonna have to go find out. That will conclude and end our share for today. We're gonna stop recording. We're gonna open it up for